It's time for a reality check.
We're here to deconstruct health and fitness trends and provide tangible advice so you can become 1% better with each choice starting today. Welcome back to Reality Check. We are your hosts, Jess and Jill, and today, Jessica named this episode, and I think it's just the most beautiful title, and we'll give you a little context about why we wanted to go through this topic today, but she named this episode Finding Vitality Through Simplicity, and it's really about living how we were designed to live and operate as humans. And in this world that is just evolving and changing and growing, and the industry and the internet, we are just inundated with information. Blessing and a curse, right, with social media, because it allows us to connect and learn. I joke that TikTok is my Google, right? I don't even Google things anymore. We have ChatGPT, right? That's what most people use. And we just have access to a lot of information. Now, the downside to that is, part of that is some analysis paralysis that comes with consuming so much information and not just like living your life and being in tune with your body. But we are also subjected to a lot of negativity and polarizing information, and this team versus this team. And if you believe this, you're good. And if you believe this, you're a terrible human. And it's just not,
it's unhealthy
for our brains. Yeah. So this is just a friendly reminder that what you consume with your food, in your day-to-day, energetically, who you spend your time with, all of that is really powerful and is within your control. And at the end of the day, you can biohack your little heart out with red light and all of these things that are shoved down our throats on social media, but really,
and which we love. Like, right, both of us use a lot of
them.
this stuff, right? But we want to talk about, like, you could add 5 million different things, but you could also just eliminate a couple of things and make it way more simple on yourself and become the healthiest version.
Yeah. I also want to give a caveat too, that like, I hate when there's arguments online and people make comments like, well, grandma did X, Y, and Z and she turned out fine, or so-and-so did this back in the day and it didn't kill you. Like, okay, it doesn't mean that, like, again, in this age of information, it's beautiful and it's a huge blessing, right? For a lot of things, especially when it comes to our health. But also, as we've evolved and gathered more information as humans, I feel like we lost the plot a little bit, right? Like, we lost the whole point of why we're here on this earth.
And our society is evolving at a pace that we can't keep up with and our brains can't keep up with. So, like, okay, maybe grandpa lived to be 100 and drank whiskey every day or something, but he also was in a society with human connection and with time slowing down and probably with a better sleep routine than we have now.
And maybe a beautiful love
TV
and marriage and family and
Right. Like, there's so many components to health.
Manual labor,
not just one
day.
Thing.
Yeah.
Right. So I was actually reading last night. I love the Chip. What's her name? Joanna Gaines has a magazine called Magnolia or whatever. I love that magazine, and I don't do a lot of like paper magazines, but the concept, she does one every quarter, and the concept is always stuff like this. Like, it's seasonal. Like, hey, it's summer. During summer, let's get back to the things that sparked joy when you were a little kid, like looking at fireflies outside or laying in the grass. Like, those kinds of things are so important, and they make us feel at peace. When we go on vacation, a lot of times it takes a few days of like not looking at my phone, not looking at my computer before my body physically winds down and is like, this feels good. This feels safe, right? Because we're so used to grinding. So, yeah, that kind of inspired this episode. And then also just like right now, the stuff going on in the world, honestly, is getting to me internally. I feel tense because of all the files that just came out and reading through just the sickness of people in the world. And having conversations with friends and people who are close to me, I'm reminded that consuming that type of information is toxic. And what am I able to pour out of my own cup if I'm reading that negative stuff? So I'm not saying to be blissfully unaware, but how much of a more positive impact can we make if we can live our lives to our healthiest and our fullest and our most positive and impact the immediate community and the people around us, because that creates ripples in society, as opposed to just constantly consuming. We were not meant to know every single horrible thing going on in the entire country, in the entire world. typically in our community, most people are good, right? We have interactions with people face to face, and then anxiety and our guards can go down a little bit with real human connection. And I think we're lacking that a lot right now. So that's kind of the concept here. But obviously, we're going to talk about exercise and food and all the things. So we kind of have pillars here that we wanted to go through. So pillar one is like light and circadian rhythm. Okay. So before we had light bulbs, right? People would farm outside or hunt and gather or whatever, and the sun and the moon are dictating our sleep wake schedules.
Our biology is still to this day tied to the sun and our circadian cycle.
Yep. So morning sunlight regulates a lot of our hormone trickle downs that happen throughout the day. So our morning cortisol spikes, and then it should be dropping as the day goes on. At night, then it triggers our melatonin production to help us sleep, right? There's all of these trickle down things. It supports our hunger cues. And that's why a lot of times when you travel and you're a several hour time difference apart, you come back and your rhythm is off, right? Or maybe your bowel movements are off because we are tied to the circadian rhythm. Well, staring at our phone all night, watching Netflix, binge watching TV, we have constant stimulation all the time. Even if you're not doing that late at night, during the day, we're more stimulated by bright light and artificial light. We're not outside. Then it ends up having this horrible impact and trickle down, right? So pillar one is sleep. Listen to your body. I have a good friend who, good for her because I am not at a place where I'm ready to do something like this, but she has 2 little kids, and several nights a week on like work nights and school nights, they do like a candle nighttime thing where they all read together or do art projects or whatever, but they just have a couple candles on and it's like genuine wind down time. They aren't having screens on or TV before bed or anything like that. At the end of this episode, I want you guys to think through these different, I think we just have like 7 pillars. I want you to think through this and see if you can do a challenge with yourself, even if it's just for 1 week, and notice how much better your body feels. So thing 1, get sunshine in the morning, turn the lights off at night, period. Those 2 things.
And if you have trouble falling asleep at night or getting quality sleep, the first thing that we would advise a client to do, if it's at all possible, is morning sun in straight in your eyeballs. That is the first thing you can do that has it's the biggest lever you can pull for regulating that rhythm. Also, I want to give a little bit of perspective that we tend to think that we need wine to relax at the end of the day, or rotting and scrolling TikTok. Like, we all do it and we joke about it, but like, you're watching Netflix, like Jess said, you're doing all these things at night to air quote relax, but it's still very stimulating. You're not actually relaxing. So I just want to give you like a little visual for yourself, especially if you're like in a household full of tiny humans too. Can you imagine the difference you would feel in your body with your nervous system if you had the ability to get morning sun, and let's say you turned off your phone at 6 p.m. for the night, right? Alarm set, good to go. And all you did for the rest of the evening between that point and when you go to bed, your kids go to bed, whatever the case is, and you just sat and talked with your spouse, played with your kids, the lights were dimmer. You allowed your body to calm and regulate and have connection every single night with the people that you love most before bed. Can you think of anything more like peaceful and regulating? And I know kids cry and life can be hard and there's shit
but
to do.
It makes your time feel like you have more life. Like when me and Brett lived in St. John, that's how it felt. People there are interacting and socializing and meeting up for dinner. We did not watch TV when we were there. I did not have internet on my phone for the first year that I lived there. And it feels like that year was like 5 years of life. You're getting your life back because you're not constantly distracted all the time. So I love that as a nighttime. And think about it. Your marriage is going to be better. Your intimate relationship with your spouse is going to be better. Your relationship with your kids is going to be better.
And you're going to fall asleep way easier than if you are just stimulating your brain and your eyeballs with blue light for 3 to 4 hours before bed.
And then on top of that, the wake up. So you mentioned maybe turn it off at 6 p.m. or before dinner time so you can have a present dinner with your family. In the same way, get up and do this morning routine before staring at your phone or scrolling or looking at the news right away or looking at emails. What's ahead for my work day? Have that moment of peace so that your body can wake up naturally before just dumping the stress and the dopamine on it right away.
And also, as an example, like blue light blocking glasses, we want you to have this I don't know, perspective or reflection through this episode of like, what is the core of being a human and connection and what allows our bodies to thrive? But a blue light blocker, I'm not saying like a lot of times we look at things like that as, oh, that's enough, right? That checks the box. It's a good start, right? If you have no control over screens or you're weaning yourself back, that's a great way to progress into that. But that's where biohacking kind of pisses me off specifically because people think, oh, I can just do this and that is a shortcut. Yeah.
Yeah, it does not replace
it. It's not the case. We're doing what we can as a society, I think, in those scenarios to offset the fact that we aren't turning our phones off at 6 p.m. and waking with the sun and doing all those things. So I just want to add that little tidbit that those things are not bad. They can be incredibly helpful to wean yourself out of unhealthy or less serving habits, but they are not the solution.
We always talk about how to set your environment up for success, but there's also this psychological component where you train your brain to expect certain things at certain times, dopamine hits, meals, whatever the thing is, right? If your spouse isn't ready to take the TV out of the bedroom, give yourself permission to watch TV, but only on the couch in the living room. And then when you go to bed, our bedroom is for sleep or time with your spouse, right? Like make it so that is your sleep oasis because now your brain doesn't get into bed and think, oh, this is my time to be overstimulated, right? So set your environment up to support those goals that you want. Okay, pillar 2, movement, right? We have tools to help us stay healthy, just like all these biohacks. I would say maybe the first really common one was when gyms were invented, right? People used to not have to go to gyms because they just did physical labor. Now we don't. We sit, we drive, we're on a computer all day. We don't get that much movement just walking around. And if you look at even like the blue zones, a lot of people will say, oh, well, this society is healthy because they were vegan, or this society is healthy because they only eat meat, and it's like all of these people just move their bodies. They eat the food that actually grows around them, whether it's animals or plants or a combination. They have social interaction. But they move, right? They're not just sitting all day long, whether it's old ladies who are gardening at 100 years old or somebody working in a farm or carrying things, right? So I'm not saying gyms are a problem, right? That's a great tool that we have. But again, prioritize. If you can just prioritize movement, you will be healthier, whatever that movement looks like.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I just was I don't know. I always reflect on my time home, on my way home from the gym for some reason, but off to a rough start in 2026. I was so sick. I'm still muting to cough here and there through this episode recording. I was really sick, down for the count a lot of January of this year, and then I traveled. I got totally out of my groove. I keep saying, I'm going to work out. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And something keeps happening, right? But I don't blame external circumstances. That's only on me, right, to control how that happens. But I jumped right back into 4 days a week. And I remember thinking, this is going to be hard. How am I going to fit 4 days in? Blah, 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 whatever, based on what my goal is right now. And I just did it. And it's just a good reminder that, how we view our priorities and the things that we do in our day to day has a lot of power over how we see things through. So for me, the way that I perceive the gym right now, it's interesting. Just like little things have happened, like my knee was bothering me when I was skiing and all little things like that I'm like, okay, you can tell I'm getting into my 30s, right? And I don't want that because there are people that have no pain and move well and are strong, 60s, 70s, whatever, right? I want to be that. So like at this point in my life, I'm so grateful that I have evolved away from really just training for my physique, which is all I did for a long time, to really training to be strong and move well and take care of my body and ensure that I'm never having to play catch up later. And what that requires is not a short-term grind. That requires me showing up for myself every single day in this lifetime in whatever way I'm able to. Now, I am in a season specifically of wanting to build more muscle right now, but again, that's not solely physique focused. That is, I've had a lot of shit happen to me in the last 2 years. Yeah, and I really want to rebuild that strength for myself. and just feel strong and capable, and selfishly so that riding horses and skiing is easier for me, because those are the things that I enjoy, and that is what I train for. And I think when you make that connection at some point, that I don't want to be the person who's old and frail and one little trip and fall, I don't have balance, I break something, whatever. I don't want to be that person in a couple of years, and I recognize that. So it's just perspective. I just chose to go to the gym 4 days a week, and it is non-negotiable for me. I don't think about that being the thing that I eliminate if I'm out of time in my day. I actually have reworked my work schedule, and I've had to adjust my expectations of what I can get done in a day, because for so many years, and I think a lot of people will resonate this, especially if you're also like business owner, career focused, whatever, is that we have this, I wrote this to-do list. This was such an epiphany that I had, like, not this past Monday, last week. I had a list that I wrote on Monday of my appointments I had, scheduled, whatever, and then the things I wanted to get done. I had 3 things that I didn't get done that day. And I was like, you know what? I need to go spend time with my family. And on Tuesday, when I woke up, normally I'd be like, all right, I got to get all these things done today now, since I didn't get them done yesterday. And I was like, I am the only one. I wrote that list. I wrote that and set the expectation that I would get those things done. And nobody is going to come for me because I didn't get those 3 things done, right? Like, I have to adjust my expectations for my work and my job and what I can realistically get done a day and still take care of myself and be present for my family. That is the perspective shift, because we cling so tight to these things that we do in our day to day, even for a boss, right? If you answer to somebody, if all of a sudden you're like, I cannot complete this, you're like, I'm going to get fired. No, you've set the expectation that you will run yourself into the fucking ground to get these things done when it's not realistic for you, right? So just a perspective shift that I think was worth sharing, because it was just a really valuable moment for me to realize that I don't have to do those things.
You don't have to. Jill always tells me, like, hey, nobody's going to die.
Yeah.
Right? And I can think of specific clients who, accountants during tax season. I have an ER doctor who's a client, and it's like, it's wonderful the work that she does, but at some point she's going to run her body into the ground if she keeps putting everybody else's health before her own health. And at the end of the day, if we could simplify our lives, what's got to give? Because something has to give. I think we've talked about that with my work too, right? Jill is my boss in a coaching standpoint. And we've had these conversations where I'm like, what am I doing? I think I can do more and more and more, but there's only so much time in the day. And at the end of the day, it's okay to say, like, okay, I want to take on less, and I make a little bit less, and I need to be more responsible with my finances for that reason. But that makes more sense in this life season when I want to be home with my kids a couple of days a week, right? So rework those priorities to make it make sense for you. Okay, pillar 3. Why do we need to add breath work, right? We talk a lot with our clients about stress reduction practices, about adding yoga, adding meditation, adding walks outside. That's because we're constantly on the go, right? We're constantly working. We're in this hustle culture. We're driving ourselves into the ground. We're scrolling social media. We're watching TV. We have these stimuluses that are constantly being dumped into our brain. I like using the analogy of like an Olympic athlete, right? The Olympic athletes are going. They are training so hard. They're training multiple times a day, every day a week. To sustain that level of stress, they have to have so much recovery to match that, to balance their allostatic load, okay? So the more stress you have, the more recovery modalities you need. That's fairly impossible for most normal people to sustain, right? Their whole lives are revolved around that recovery. For most normal people, and a lot of the women that we work with who are very high achieving people, it's easier to just take away a couple stressors rather than adding more recovery, right? Instead of adding more, stop running 12 miles 3 days a week. We're going to dial that back a little bit. Not because running's bad, but because you aren't getting the recovery inputs required to sustain that level of activity. Let's turn off the TV at night and go to bed an hour earlier, right? Those are the types of things that we're talking about here. Listen to your body. Jill always gives her clients exercises of lay on the floor and stare at the ceiling for 10 minutes with no phones, nobody around you. Think of how uncomfortable that might make you, just having to be still with your own brain, right? You can train your brain to slow down and quiet down, and then over time, your nervous system starts to regulate. So add the breath work, but also can we reduce or remove the things that are dysregulating us in the first place?
Yeah. And actually, I had
drinks. Oh,
God, I was going to say on to that point, like in my EMDR therapy session this week, I was talking about how, and this happens every once in a while. I'm in a really big season of shifting things right now, and it means getting a little bit uncomfortable. But like I know that going into it. But I told her, like, I'm starting to feel it with my sleep a little bit. Like if I falling asleep, I feel my mind racing a little bit more. If I wake up, my brain instantly goes to like these things I got to do, these things that might come up. And obviously that's a little bit of like an anxious feeling, like worried about the future in some fashion, right? And I have awareness of that. And she was like, what if you journal before bed, and not journal like share your feelings, because she's like, I don't really think that's helpful in this scenario. She said, I think more of like, what are the things that are in your mind racing, and you're going into the bedroom without clearing this mental plate and capacity, right? So now you lay in bed, you finally rest and quiet down for the day, and all of a sudden all of those things come rushing to the top of your mind, right? So she's like, in another room, even in your office, wherever, not in your bed, journal, write out those thoughts of what you're worried about. She's like, no expectation. It's not to find a solution. It's not any of those things. It's just to word vomit what's in your brain on paper so that it's a release for
it's
your body.
out of you. You can clear it and then go to bed.
And then worst case, you have terrible problems that you have to address, but you don't have to worry about them through that night of sleep because there's nothing you can do. It's on paper. You know what you need to take care of. So
pick it up tomorrow when you wake up after a good night's sleep. Yeah, I think that's great.
And then the other thing I wanted to say, you mentioned ER doctor and these professions and things. A lot of times we tend to compare. So like, somebody might be like, well, why doesn't so-and-so have to do that activity? Or why doesn't so-and-so have to do X, Y, and Z? Or why is her gut fine when she eats all this? Or why is weight loss easier for her, right? And it's so important to understand this specifically in a bigger context, not even just stress. But when you have all of these things going on in your day and these stressors on your body, to Jess's point, we need to counteract some of that. And you have no idea what somebody's day-to-day looks like, not to mention just the status of their nervous system and their ability to tolerate stress and their resilience to their day-to-day. They might tolerate stress way more effectively than you do. And that's not anything wrong with you, but that just means you need a little bit of extra love for your body to counteract that. Weight loss in and of itself is a stressor. If you want that to go the way that you think it'll go in your head, you need to balance that stressor out, which is why you can't just go 0 to 100 and slash calories and cut nutrients and work out and burn calories and all those things. And then you're like, wow, I don't feel good. I don't know why. And it's like, come on, you're putting massive stressors on your body for a really long time. And those are the stressors that you have control over. I always joke, the ones you don't have control over, you can't just quit your job. You can't drop your kids off on someone's front porch and walk away, right? Those are the things that you can't control. So you have to focus on what you can control. And that's adding things in like this, controlling the quality of your food and how you spend your time and your mental energy and what you're consuming in every aspect.
Reduce the other stressors that you can reduce. So fewer late night screens, less caffeine, less news, fewer unnecessary commitments. If it doesn't fully align with who you want to be, write that down. Journal, like, what does my ideal life really look like? Why do I keep committing to things that I just out of obligation, right? Less artificial urgency. We feel like, I have to do this thing.
Yes.
Okay. Create boundaries to protect your peace and be with the most important people in your life. Do the most important things, because this is not a practice life, right? Like, this is your life. So slow
and you
down
don't get
and
that time back that you're rushing through and skimming by. Like, if you could make one change in your day, practice it. You listen to this episode, the rest of the day you do this. Every action you take today, it's going to get done when it gets done. I want you to mentally rush less, slow it down. What is shaving off 30 seconds of the activity you're completing in the grand scheme of things? Just slow down. There is no rush.
And if you do one task at a time, that helps. So that's something that both of us are very guilty of. I'm listening to podcasts constantly. I'm always wanting to learn more things, right? okay, well, if I'm doing that while I'm also having notes up to go through somebody's blood work, and it's going to slow me down mentally. Like cognitively, you cannot do you can't multitask. It's not possible. There's lots of research on that.
I actually tried to listen to 2 calls yesterday at the same time, and I was like, "Oh my god, something is wrong with me."
You end up absorbing nothing and wasting your own
from
time.
either call. Yeah.
If there's anything you can do to reduce stimulation, one, stop taking in stimulants, which also a lot of like weight loss supplements or even antidepressants or like doctors are giving these things like, oh, it'll help your weight loss. Okay, it's just getting your body to run faster. So you're getting more dopamine hit or more epinephrine, more go, go, go. Eventually our body adapts and then we swing in the other direction anytime we're adding more. So reduce the stuff, focus on one task at a time. Again, just do it for 7 days in a row and watch your nervous system chill out.
Cool. So that is the first 3 pillars. So this will be part 1 of this series of really just finding vitality in your life and simplifying. So come back to the episode next week for the rest of the pillars that we'll break down. We've got some really good stuff also for you guys in terms of like taking this information away. And then of course, we always like to give you something actionable. So, yeah, part 2 will really wrap this series up and give you something tangible to walk away with and start practicing. I think we've already given a couple tools through this episode, but we always like to give you a good recap. So that is all for today's episode, and we will see you guys next time.